Hi, my name is Mark Douglas Cobb. Um, I want to tell a story, an anecdote from my life, something that stands out, something that in my life and I think stands out and the people in the lives of people that I've met. And it all started in 1991. I was living in Joliet, Illinois, and I was going to a conservative Christian church called the Church of Christ. One Sunday morning, while listening to the sermon, I had a vision, which is very difficult to describe, but it did last for about 40 minutes. I'll try to describe it later. Um, I thought maybe it was just a hallucination because I'd always suspected that I had some mental illness. But after the services ended and I walked out into the light, it disappeared. There is one other thing that led me to believe that maybe it was more than just a hallucination is that, as I'll go into more later, my eyes seem to function in a way that I'd never seen or experienced before. Um, a week later, at the same church, which was located right next door to the grandparents of the girl that I was dating. And she would go to church with me. But I think at that particular Sunday morning she was not. And in any case, the next week one of the elders came up to me. I think there are usually three or five elders in a congregation. And I'd never spoke to him before. I'd never spoke to any of the elders. I hadn't been going there for a very long time because I hadn't lived there for a while. And he invited me to lunch the next Sunday after church. So after church the next Sunday, we went out to lunch to a very popular restaurant. And he introduced himself, went into his a little bit of his past, you know, and then it was small talk here and there, and then he started talking to me on a different level. He introduced himself as a Freemason, a former Freemason who had left the Freemasons after his 32nd degree. There are 33 degrees in Freemasonry. Apparently, they had told him something about Freemasonry that he was not privy to uh, until he got to that level, and it made him want to quit. There are certain things that he could tell me and certain things that he wouldn't tell me. And he did say it was a secret society, so I understood. But he knew that I'd had the vision. And he told me that I was different. He didn't use the word special, I don't think. Maybe he did. Uh, and then he went into how he was approached by a Freemason and how he was able to do what people used to call ESP or parapsychology. So I found this fascinating, and at this point had thought, yeah, this is definitely someone that's, I think, is credible, someone that's telling the truth. Uh, he went on to tell me about his abilities. I'll use one example. He told me that he was in a restaurant. He got up to the bar. He sat down on a stool, and there was a woman next to him. And as soon as he sat down, he knew that that woman's husband was going to try and kill her that night in a train yard. So he told her. And she not only believed him, she wasn't even surprised. She knew that something like that might happen. So, of course, I was blown away at this time of my life. You know, never heard anything like that before. I'd never heard of the Freemasons, except for maybe my dad had the ring, but he'd never spoken of it before. I have an uncle that was a Freemason, but he'd never spoken to it before. This is just maybe a word I'd heard twice in my childhood. So, yeah, after that, you know, going to church was different. My girlfriend and I started to get invitations to some of the members' houses for dinner. I would have long talks with Frank, that was his name, Frank Sotomayor. At the time, I was being treated a little bit differently. There was another guy my age that was growing his hair long, and believe it or not, they had a talk with him. And simultaneously, I was growing my hair longer, and no one said a word to me, which I thought was kind of, I didn't know. Anyway, it got to the point where he had offered me some money to help me live on, and it just made me feel weird. I don't know what it was about it, but it just triggered something inside me, and I didn't really ever go back again. One thing that was strange is that Sunday mornings in a classroom setting in the basement with other classrooms, we were studying the book of Revelations. And the year before, no, 3 years before, in Danville, Kentucky, I also studied the book of Revelations, along with many other books, because I was going to school there to become a preacher, which I did not. So, yeah, I stopped going, and shortly after I relocated, I moved to Arizona. And I never saw Frank again, and which is a real shame. But like I said, the whole thing made me feel kind of spooked out or something, and that was the end of that. 3, 4 years went by, and not knowing, it's like having too much knowledge is really dangerous. That's the way I kind of felt, and it confused me. I got a new perspective of the world, but personally, I didn't know how it would affect me. Then, like I said, 3 or 4 years later, I moved to Louisville, Kentucky, where I live now. And my girlfriend and I were living in a carriage house, and I don't think I was working at the time, and my girlfriend was at work, and the maintenance man came in to work on the air conditioner or something like that, and he was the son, middle-aged son of the landlord. And that's what he did most of the time, is he was a maintenance man for her properties, maintaining her properties. So we're doing the small talk thing again, and all of a sudden, here it comes. Now, mind you, Frank's whole reason, he said, for talking to me was to warn me. He said that because of who I was, or what I was, whatever you want to call it, I may be approached someone may try to recruit me. So I didn't understand that, of course, but fast forward those few years, the maintenance man, I remember his name was Ron. I don't remember his last name. His mother's name was Lynn. And he told me that he knew that I was different. And then all of a sudden it all came flooding back and I thought, what? And he told me that he was a member of a secret society called the Knights of St. John. And this is before there was home computers in everyone's home. And I didn't have a home computer. We didn't have the internet. If we did have a computer, we didn't have the internet. And I didn't know anything about Freemasonry or secret societies or anything like that. I'd never, I don't even know if Frank said the word secret society. But I knew what Ron was talking about. I mean, I understood because of the context. The Knights of St. John, he said, worked for the Vatican, for the Pope, I guess. And they went on, certain of them had abilities, like Frank. And I don't think I told Ron about, I probably did tell Ron about Frank. He wasn't surprised. So these abilities, he said, he started to go into what abilities he had. And he told me that he had telekinesis. And that the Vatican would send people on missions. Now this is where it gets really, really fringe. These missions would include assassinations of Freemasons. And the method is using the telekinesis to sever some neuron. I don't recall how he mentioned it, but something damage something in the brain for them to die of a hemorrhage or I don't know, something like that. And then they would just drop dead. And I was just blown away. I mean, if I wasn't blown away by Frank, I certainly was blown away by Ron telling me this because it was so off the charts. And he told me that although he's done this and he does this, he has friends that are Freemasons. I don't know. So that whole thing about that whole Dan Brown thing about the Freemasons or the Illuminati being at war with the Vatican or the Pope, all that stuff. I stumbled upon those books later when they came out in the late 90s, I guess it was. And then we got the internet. Maybe it was the same period. I don't know. I can't remember. And of course, as soon as we got the internet, I'm like, well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look up Freemasonry. Because I'd never read any books on Freemasonry, seen any books on Freemasonry. So as soon as we got the computer, it was like another level had risen. Now, in the early days of the internet, you didn't have YouTube. You didn't have a lot. But when it came to a subject like Freemasonry, to me, it was like a warehouse of books. And at that time, they didn't yet have the whole Illuminati thing. No one was talking about the Illuminati. If you knew about the Illuminati, it's because you spent some time on the computer and it just the links just linked you to it eventually. But it wasn't what they call conspiracy theory now. And from what I understand about the Illuminati that I've read, because I started reading books on the subject as well as looking on the internet, the Illuminati existed in like 1784 or something, and only for like a very short period of time. Now we have Freemasons, but the strange thing about Freemasonry now is that I have met the head of a lodge in the suburbs of Chicago through a girl, a friend of mine that I went to church camp with. He and his lodge are very much a fraternity, a men's fraternity, and that's it. They know nothing about Pythagoras or nothing about sacred geometry or the history of Freemasonry or anything like that. They go out on the weekends together. They drink together. They ride motorcycles together, stuff like that. And they're just normal people. Whether I think online, people have this idea that Freemasons are like this shadowy, conniving group, and they're 99.9% of them are just ordinary people. It's just those very small percentage of 33-degree Masons that are like Frank and Ron. As far as myself is concerned, I always thought of myself as different, as a lot of people think that about themselves. My mother, of course, told me I was special. A lot of people go through that. And I've seen some strange things in my life. I don't know if I was the cause or not, but I've never been able to do anything metaphysical on purpose. It hasn't really had a big effect on my life at all. It's never had any effect on my life at all. I have the knowledge, I'll give it to you, or the experience, I should say, that I'll give to you. But as far as it being a benefit to me in my life, it's never really, I'm not won the lottery by guessing numbers or anything like that. I'm not a mentalist. I've never made money, as you can see. I'm just a normal guy. If anything, it's made me feel separated from people and kind of confused. Well, that's my story. It's a strange one. It's kind of a fantastic one for people to believe. I understand that. One of my favorite shows on TV was Believe It or Not, like in the early 80s, like 82 or something like that. Fran Tarkington was the host, the football player. And I think he was a quarterback or something. He looked like a quarterback. But I used to love shows like that. And when something like that actually happened to me personally, I thought this is what made me special or different, is the experience of it. Not any kind of result or there was no goal or and until I tried writing about it, but I could never come up with an ending. And I guess that's where I'll end this video now. This is the point that I have no ending to the story. It continues, and maybe somebody will see this video and they'll think to themselves, oh, okay, this will alter my view of reality, and to understand that there are things going on in this world all around us that I wasn't aware of, and that's interesting to know. There's nothing you can do about any of it, but you can list it to your, you can add it to your list of things that you've learned today. Thank you for your time. Have a good day.